So, Ryan, you grew up in New York, didn't you?
Hmm.
Yeah, whereabouts?
I'm from Long Island, New York. I'm about an hour away by train.
Okay, cool. And you grew up with a dad that was a comedian.
Yeah,
Tell me about that because you must have been exposed to comedy your whole life.
yeah,
Was he always into comedy?
yeah. So my dad was doing comedy before I was born. My dad was doing comedy in the '80s.
Right.
My dad was doing comedy with people who then grew to be big comics. Like my dad's really good friends with Joey Cola, who in Long Island is like a living legend in the comedy scene, and he is been on Martha Stewart's show. He's on Drew Barrymore's show. He has been on Rosie O'Donnell's show. Jimmy Fallon was on Drew Barrymore's show and literally called out Joey that Joey helped him put him on when nobody was putting him on, let him open for him and helped open doors for him. And Joey was somebody that my dad would always talk about and be like, this is my friend Joey that is actually doing well. And
Wow.
he had a lot of friends like that. And my dad he never got to that level. I think he got to a certain point where he decided to stop. And then he was doing start and stop. He had me and was focusing on raising me and having a full-time job and doing all that, and then would do comedy when he could. He was working on a radio show in the morning where he would go to work at 6 in the morning, would do this radio show at 5 and then go right to work.
Wow.
And then would work 8, 9 hours or 10 hours. I'm I don't know how he did it. And he would do that stuff, and then he ran, which I always knew about, but I've learned more now. Back in Long Island in the late 90s, early 2000s, there were not a lot of open mics. There was 2 or 3 open mics. And my dad ran one of the most consistent open mics in my town for years. And there's a ton of headlining comics that now are your father helped me. Your father had a show that I could go on when nobody else could.
Wow.
And when you think of New York City, we sneeze and we find an open mic. Back then, there was very few to find. And my dad would do one out of a coffee shop every week. And he would try to put everybody on, and they had audience, and it kind of felt like the Grizzly Pear shows that we do. And people always talk about my dad in that way, and my dad used to give rides to a guy who then was in a bunch of Spike Lee movies, and my dad's always had a hand, and he helped someone who then he gave them the rub that then helped them on. But my dad's joke now is he's the longest running open mic comedian in Long Island, but he doesn't give himself the credit that he deserves.